Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling something absolutely huge. We are deconstructing the anatomy of a rising power. Specifically, unpacking the rapid ascent of modern India as a pivotal 21st century global heavy hitter. Now, whether you're someone who watches global markets like a hawk, or you're just starting to notice India popping up more and more in your news feed, this explainer is built to help you understand exactly what is driving this nation of over 1.4 billion people forward. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's jump right in. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with Part 1, Beyond the Stereotypes. Then Part 2, Understanding Modern India. Part 3, The Economic Growth Engine. Followed by Part 4, A Geopolitical Balancing Act. And finally, Part 5, Shaping the Global Future.
All right, Section 1, Beyond the Stereotypes. Let's unlearn some outdated myths, shall we? Because to truly understand modern India, we've got to clear away some of the historical fog that's clouded global perception for decades.
For a really long time, the global narrative got India completely wrong. Historically, the country was often just brushed off as an, and I quote, inert and distant grouping of people and poverty, a combination of the exotic and tragic. For decades, this total misperception was fueled by media stereotyping. The Western world essentially painted India as this stagnant place defined mostly by its struggles, which completely hid the incredibly vibrant, dynamic reality actually taking shape on the ground.
But here's a massive reality check that instantly shatters that old illusion. 7%. That's India's annual economic growth rate right now, making it the world's fastest-growing major economy. So we are absolutely not looking at an inert, stagnant nation. We're looking at a society with this vigorously churning internal dynamic that actually accounts for about 15% of the world's total economic output growth. If you care about where global markets are heading, this is momentum you literally cannot afford to ignore.
Moving on to Section 2, Understanding Modern India. So what exactly is fueling all this dynamic energy? Let's pop the hood and look at the societal engines driving the country, using author Ralph Bulchin's framework.
Bulchin brilliantly distills this vast, complex subcontinent into 5 key themes. First up, immense diversity. We're talking 15 official languages, hundreds of minor ones, and thousands of dialects. Second, profound cultural depth. And it's a wild paradox, really, because you have this 4,000-year-old cultural consciousness operating inside a modern state that was only established in 1947. Third, it's a land of minorities, meaning pluralistic beliefs require some incredibly complex political navigation. Fourth is the interaction of two worlds, which we'll unpack in just a second. And fifth, the coexistence of poverty, spirituality, and modernity. You see, spirituality helps people endure hardships, while modernity offers the real, tangible prospect that things can get better.
And that brings us right into the interaction of two very, very different worlds. On one side, you've got urban India. It's about 20% of the population, and it's highly cosmopolitan. It's the hub of modern industry, big tech, and national politics. But on the other side, you have rural India, which is made up of around 600,000 villages functioning on pretty age-old traditional patterns. India's ultimate success basically relies on effectively linking these two worlds. When they mesh well, say through expanding education or healthcare, India completely thrives. But when there's a disconnect, that's when deep challenges pop up.
All right, Section 3, the Economic Growth Engine. We've looked at the internal dynamic. Now let's see how that translates into massive external economic force.
The projections for India's middle class are, quite frankly, staggering. Right now, it sits at about 300 million people, but by 2030, that number is expected to double to 600 million. Just think about that for a second. That is literally adding a population the size of the entire United States to the global middle class in less than a decade. This is way more than a domestic milestone. It's a tidal wave that's going to dictate global consumption patterns for products and services for years and years to come.
To really grasp what this economic momentum looks like in the real world, let's look at a micro-narrative, the Ford Motor Company. Now, you might remember that Ford famously, and very loudly, exited India back in 2021. But plot twist, they recently announced a dramatic comeback. They're pouring a massive 3,250 crore rupee investment into revamping their Chennai plant, aiming to roll out production by 2029. This isn't just a corporate backtrack. It's a massive global statement of confidence in the Indian market.
So, why the sudden U-turn? Well, it boils down to a few key things. First, access to a massive pool of highly skilled engineers. Second, a rapidly expanding electric vehicle infrastructure. Third, incredible momentum from government Make in India initiatives.
Oh, and add to that the fact that India's automotive exports are currently hitting record highs. It proves a really vital shift. India is no longer just the world's cheap assembly line, it's practically the growth engine for future mobility and innovation.
Section 4. A Geopolitical Balancing Act. As the old bipolar world order starts to fade out, India is shifting from its historic non-aligned roots into a highly strategic, modern multi-alignment policy.
Think about India's diplomatic strategy as running on two parallel tracks. On one hand, India is heavily aligning with Western groupings, like the Quad with the US, Australia, and Japan, and they're actively expanding defense ties with nations like Israel and France. But at the exact same time, they are deeply embedded in Asian and Global South organizations. We're talking the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, and SAARC. It is a masterful, high-wire balancing act. They're securing their own interests while totally navigating the complex new north-south and east-west dynamics of our multipolar world.
And here's the thing. India isn't just sitting at the table in these groups. They're leading through action. $70 billion. That is the cumulative amount of external aid India has contributed to developing countries since gaining independence. It actually makes India the second largest donor of external aid in the world. It's a pretty powerful statistic that shows how India is actively leveraging its economic rise to support and influence the broader global south.
And that financial support ties directly into India's identity as a stabilizing force for global peace. Even though they're a nuclear-armed power with one of the biggest militaries on the planet, India uses this clout constructively. They are actually the largest contributor to United Nations peacekeeping operations. They actively push to revive SAARC to improve regional connectivity, and they consistently choose mutual respect and regional stability over aggression.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Shaping the Global Future. We've seen where India comes from, how it's growing, and how it navigates the world. Now let's look at how its scale and innovations position it to basically architect tomorrow's global order.
India has essentially built the ultimate 21st century toolkit, proving they have the capabilities of a fully developed nation. Unprecedented digital public infrastructure built at a totally staggering speed? Check. Massive soft power backed by their status as the world's largest functioning democracy? Check. Add in some cutting-edge expertise in science, software engineering, and space technology, all driven by an incredibly deep pool of highly skilled manpower, and the picture becomes exceptionally clear.
A perfect, real-world example of this toolkit combining with diplomatic intent is Vaccine Maitri. During the absolute darkest days of the global pandemic, India launched this massive logistical initiative to supply COVID-19 vaccines to other countries. Operating right alongside the Vande Bharat program, which successfully repatriated stranded citizens globally, Vaccine Maitri was a monumental feat of both soft power and scientific infrastructure. It reinforced their global position not just as a rising economic powerhouse, but as an incredibly reliable friend in need to the international community.
So, this all brings us to one huge defining question. As the new multipolar world order emerges, is the 21st century destined to be the Indian century? We've seen the staggering demographic momentum, the economic engines roaring to life, and a highly calculated, peaceful geopolitical strategy. Whether it officially becomes the definitive Indian century remains to be seen, but one thing is absolutely certain. You cannot understand the future of our world without understanding modern India. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.